Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, April 20th of 2025. Now I have a really lovely message for you today, and this kind of started in two parts as far as my thought process of the idea or the fact, if you will, that we have a definite timeline split happening, that there are people that are sticking with the old systems and their belief systems, and then there's a whole group that's walking on a different path. They've been awakened to different truths, and it's been an interesting thing to watch. And I had this little bit of an epiphany on the idea that we're going to reach a point where there might not be any middle ground. There'll be no more of an ability to sit on the fence and see where the majority is going, because you're going to have to choose a path. And it's to me, it's becoming already obviously clear that you have to choose a path. So at the very beginning of the week, I wrote this: when times are hard, bring your best self forward. I think we all work on this higher consciousness state. We all work on all these things. We know all these truths deep within ourselves, and it doesn't sometimes change the experience, even when we do these steps and go through all these things and put into practice the things that we're learning, because this physical life on this earth can be very difficult sometimes, just emotionally, spiritually, financially, relationship wise. So when times are hard, bring your best self forward. It's just kind of something that dropped in at the beginning. Show up every day and do good stuff. Just show up every day and do good stuff. I'm still in that little bit of a flow where most days I can get out of bed pretty quickly, and once I wake up, I'm up pretty early. But I had a couple days this week when I just wanted to stay in bed. I just want to stay in that mostly asleep place, and it felt like I just wasn't ready to face the energies of the world. And I don't think I'm the only one that's feeling that. So then I wrote this: the timeline split. There will be no middle ground. And then what I started thinking about when I had that thought was, there is an art to listening to your inner wisdom. I have gone through years and years, and I could even say decades at this point, of looking outside of myself for the answers. I talked to a friend, I talked to a sister, I've had hypnotherapy, I've had past life regressions, I've done, I've watched tarot card readings. I think we're always looking outside of ourselves for an answer. We always want someone else to tell us what to do. And I realized that there is an art to listening to our own inner wisdom. So it kind of spurred really the rest of this week's journaling. So I think that where this comes in, and maybe the timeline split first. There's an awakened reality, and then there's a fear-based reality. And I think even the people that are living in a fear-based reality, they wouldn't describe it that way. I've had some people in my life that are close to me that are following a different timeline than I'm following, and they would beg to differ that they were in a fear-based reality. And what I mean by that is, I mean that when you are in the current medical model, let's just take that. That's a fear-based system. They scare you if you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't take this drug and you don't do this surgery, and and all the things that keep this in a fear-based model. So that is what I mean by fear-based. I don't think these people walk around in fear. I think that their belief system is in this model, in this system. So then I asked myself, what does that really mean? An awakened reality as compared to a fear-based reality? And what I think it is I think it's a consciousness revolution. That is what an awakened reality is. And it's a timeline where we get to be free, because we are free. It just is. We just are. So an awakened reality is just that, right? And then I asked myself this, what does that really look like? Okay, so I think that an awakened reality looks like this: heart-centered, radically self-responsible. We don't ignore reality or deny the dark stuff. We are just aware. So to me, it's like, we're not saying that there's not things that maybe we should be careful of. I don't think we need to live in fear. Fear is a choice. Fear is always a choice, no matter what the situation is, which is an interesting thing to think about, right? So then I asked myself this: how do I or will I know if I have arrived or I'm on an awakened timeline? So maybe the question is that, how do you know? And I think that it's pretty obvious once you're on the timeline of seeing the world not as it is, but as we are. That already shows you that you are on an awakening timeline. And I think what happens is we have layers that we have to peel back, because if this were to drop in all at once, our physical body might not be able to handle it, right? So there's some things that I think that this will show you this is how you can tell. So the first thing is the way you look at your health. You do prevention, you have energy, you have an inner wisdom, and you do something that I like to call intuitive healing. We intuitively know what our body needs. We know what it needs to eat. We know what it needs to drink. We can even use our ego brain to tell us what we know to eat and drink. But then let's take it another level and talk about intuitive healing. What does that mean? And if you start to really question and start to dive deep into these things, this can show you that you are on an awakening timeline. When you look at information, you use discernment and you use your own experience. Okay? Education looks like curiosity, creativity, and it's a lot more holistic. This is something that I believe many people are starting to realize, is that while education is important, the current education model is not serving humanity. It might be here and there, especially if you specialize in something, but for the most part, it's not full of curiosity, it's not full of creativity, and it's far from holistic. So you'll know if you're on an awakening timeline if you look at education through a different lens, through those three lenses. Now, the next thing I wrote down here is our finances. We become more purpose-driven, and we want to create value. So, I know many people, and part of it's because of the age that I am now. A lot of people in my age group, my friendship base, the people me and my husband socialize with, they're all getting close to retirement. And a lot of them are just hanging on to finish out something that they don't enjoy, and they can't until they can retire. And it's, so your finances, I think many people are starting to realize, and not just people who are getting ready to retire. I think many people have second careers when they retire, and they do something purpose driven and they do value creation. We should all be doing something that brings value to the collective. So, and then you can tell that you're on a timeline when your spirituality shifts and changes. Okay. It becomes front and center. To me, when you're awakening, this is what you're on. You're on a spiritual journey. We're connecting to source, to the earth, and to ourself. Okay? We source our own identity. We don't wait for someone else to tell us who we are. And this is what I was talking about in the beginning, as far as all these things we tap into. A tarot card reading on YouTube, and I know there's a ton there because I've watched a lot of my own tarot readings over the years. It'll pop in, and there it is. There's Taurus, and it's you wait for someone to tell you. You're sourcing out your own power to someone that's reading some tarot cards, and maybe you've never done that. But there's all kinds of things that we outsource. We wait to see what kind of a mood our spouse is in, or our coworkers are in, or whatever. So when we are on an awakening timeline, we source our own identity. We become an I am consciousness, not what I do or what I own. So we become an I am consciousness. And what identifies us is not what we do and what we own. So even in I say in anyone's situation, no matter what it is that you do, even if you're bringing massive value, that still does not define you. You are pure consciousness, pure love, okay? And then emotions, okay? We use our emotions as a compass for growth. So, think about that. We use our emotions. So here's what I wrote. I am the creator of my reality, okay? When you feel the truth in this very statement, you know that you are on the right path. Okay, so then I kind of expand a little bit on the thought that there will be no middle ground. I think we're already reaching that point. Some of the people that have chosen to walk on the different timeline are people I never thought would no longer be in my life. It's very odd to watch, and they're still buying into all the old systems. And they're good people. It's not that they're not good people. It's very strange. So then I wrote this. This is the year that people sitting on the fence will get uncomfortable. So I think that if there are people that can see that there's two paths to take, if you're not already on one path or the other, it's going to be impossible to sit on the fence. You're going to have to choose, right? You can already see it. People are all in with either the fear-based reality or the awakened reality. For those who sleep, it will feel like a soul death, anger, and self-righteousness, and staying with the old comfortable systems, right? I mean, I wrote this because I have people that I love that are following this path, and it's just so interesting to watch, For those who continue on the awakened reality, this requires courage, bravery, and risk, because we could lose it all, right? Friends, old habits, safety nets, and a way of life. It does take bravery and courage, and you might feel like you're taking a risk. And at the end, and even in the middle, once you jump, it's kind of like jumping off a cliff and building your parachute on the way down. Being an entrepreneur myself and building a couple businesses, I know what that means. The time is never going to be right to launch your business. You have to launch it and then build it as you go. Find what works, find what doesn't work. So I always used to say, because I have a couple of siblings that are entrepreneurs too and have their own businesses as well. And it's like we always say, you got to jump off the cliff and build your parachute on the way down. And I think that this is a really good place to put this awakened path. If you're sitting on the fence, you're like, I really want to go here, but this is comfortable. It's a quote comfortable. And it's comfortable to stay asleep until you're just either fully in or it's not comfortable anymore. So it requires courage, bravery, and risk. You could lose it all: your friends, your old habits, your safety nets, and your way of life. But this offers three things: liberation, freedom, and sovereignty. Okay, you are literally shifting your entire worldview and orientation to life itself. And all of this takes the art of inner knowing. Okay, and I wrote on here the golden key. I think that when you master the art of your inner knowing, your inner wisdom, that is the golden key to the awakened timeline. Okay, so there's an art of listening to our inner wisdom. And then I wrote, ta-da, because that almost seems to cover all of it right there. The art of listening to our inner wisdom. Our inner wisdom does not shout at us. It uses its inside quiet voice, and it whispers. Sometimes it whispers. So your inner wisdom is not going to shout at you and get mad at you, okay? So we need to cultivate the ability to hear what it's whispering. Okay, so this is where stillness comes in. Here's what I wrote about that. So, well, there's a few things that come in, but the first one is stillness. If you're going to hear that quiet voice, that inner knowing, you can't be constantly distracted. So here's what I wrote. You need to be slow down. It isn't laziness, it's being receptive. Okay? So when you take a minute, you step outside of everything that's distracting you and be annoyed. I mean, we fill our lives up with so much stuff and busyness. And we never take a minute just to be still. You don't have to be still all day long. You know, I have a new friend who just went on a 10-day silent retreat. And for 10 days, her and a small group of people, you know, she went to this retreat. And I've personally never been to one. But how fascinating. You know, I bet it was brilliant. Well, I'm going to be seeing her later today, so I'm going to find out all about that. But so then, not just stillness, then we need to use discernment. Okay, so not fear, but calm, clear, and sometimes it can be surprising, is what I wrote. Okay, sometimes when we use discernment, what we get might surprise us. Then we need to tune into our gut feelings, because our body is always giving us signals and it's telling us things. Okay, so we need to feel it in our whole body. It's things like you get a chill, like a chill down your spine or on the back of your neck, or you get a gut feeling, like your gut will clench. If something's wrong or something's happening, you might even get like a little flutter in your heart. You know, your body, you've felt these before. When something feels off, it's almost like when you go, you're driving somewhere and there's two different ways to go, and your intuition tells you to go this way rather than this way. And it's because you just get that little feeling. You might get a little flutter in your heart. That can be a very, very quiet voice. Your body talking to you and saying, hey, I'm guiding you over here. You have to have discernment about that. And you might not ever know why you didn't go that way. You might not ever know why you chose to go this way, except for your gut told you to. And, you know, and I think the key is to not go, well, that was really silly because this other way took me longer. And next time, forget it, you know. So I would say always pay attention to those little things, because sometimes you do hear, oh, I heard there was an accident this other way. And it not only maybe would have taken me half an hour longer, but maybe I would have gotten caught in the accident as well. So your body is always giving you signals. And this is one of the ways it speaks to you. Nature, there are natural rhythms in nature. And, you know, nature is something I talk about all the time. You can go sit in nature, put your feet on the ground, and you will get so much inner wisdom and inner guidance that it might blow you away. It's a really beautiful thing. Creativity. Okay, this is one of the ways, believe it or not, that our inner voice, our inner wisdom can speak to us. And what I mean by that is, I wrote this, when we do art or movement, it opens a portal. So think about things that are creative. Dance is creative. Any type of art, any type of writing. There's a portal that opens because we're creating space for things to come in. You know, when I'm painting and doing my art, you know, you see a little bit of my art behind me over here. I just got the chills because some of the things that come in and the problem solving that just happens while I'm being creative is a little bit unbelievable to describe unless you experience it. So think about being creative, and it does not matter what it is, because we all have different things that interest us. But pay attention to what drops in from your inner wisdom when you're being creative. And then be present with your emotions, okay? We need to sit with them without judgment, okay? Let them alchemize into wisdom. I think that says it all, right? Your inner voice is a channel. It's a direct channel to God, our creator, our higher self, source, pure consciousness, pure love and pure knowing. And it's there for all of us. Every one of us has it. Nobody's left out. And I think some people have turned off the channel. They've actually turned off their signal. And there are physical things that I think that have been put at us on purpose to like calcify our pineal gland, to stop us from having quiet time, keeping us disconnected from everything that we need to thrive and be connected to source. Okay, so look at your inner voice as your channel. Okay, so then I ask myself this question: do we stay plugged in from habit or perceived comfort? So are we plugged into this matrix just out of pure habit? Or do we perceive that it's comfortable? You know, that's a good question to ask yourself, right? It's the problem with those things that it's all outward. Those are all outward things. We must turn inward. That's where all the answers are. You know, I had this. It's interesting. I did a podcast a while ago, and after it was dropped, the name of the podcast, I'll have to see if I can find it. But the person who did it actually named it because I opened up about a lot of stuff, and the name of the podcast was "There's Nothing That Can Hurt Me." And what I meant by that, because we talked about that during the podcast, I meant by that was what really makes me me, the inner inside, the consciousness, the core of who I am. Nobody can hurt that. Our physical avatar can get hurt, and eventually our physical avatar is no longer viable. We die. It's all part of it. But what really makes us us, nobody can touch that. So rather than going outward, we need to go inward, okay? So listening to our inner wisdom is like having the most powerful compass. It'll guide us perfectly. It's been stomped out of us. In fact, a few weeks ago I talked about listening to a lecture by Dr. Thomas Campbell, and he talked about how he's the author of My Big Toe, which stands for My Big Theory of Everything. Really good work. There's three volumes, very dense but very good work. I'd suggest his work to anyone. But one of the things he talked about was when we're young, when we're born with intellect and we're born with intuition. But the intuition doesn't get nurtured like the intellect does. And as we grow up, the intellect is always getting nurtured and fed and stroked and and watered, and our intellect is all what it's all about. But our intuition, which is super, super strong, doesn't get nurtured at all. So when our intuition sometimes pipes in to guide us, our intellect steps in and just smashes it down because it's been nurtured way over the intuition. So listening to our inner wisdom is like having the most powerful compass. That's what that is, our intuition. It's the key to help us navigate what is unfolding right before our eyes. Every day things are unfolding before our eyes, and it can feel easier to suck into the things that numb us out to it. But this is the most exciting time to be here. And if you tune into that inner guidance, golden. You're golden. So let me say that again. It's the key to help us navigate what is unfolding right before our eyes. Then I wrote, and to help us remember who we are. That is the real work. Okay? Inner wisdom equals the voice of our true self. There's no shouting and there's no manipulating. Our inner wisdom does not bully us. It doesn't shout at us. It doesn't try to manipulate us. Okay? It's waiting patiently to get our attention. We have to remember how to hear it again. We have to remember how to hear it. And it will zoom back at you very quickly. Once you start paying attention to it, it's not going to take years and years and years and decades. You need to give it a little bit of attention, water it a little bit, give it some nutritious food, metaphorically, but feed your intuition, that inner wisdom. We've lost touch with our beautiful inner voice through these different things. cultural programming, societal programming, religious programming, overstimulation, distractions, trauma, fear of change, because if you think about it, the truth can be scary. When you find out new truths, it can be a little jolting. And, we don't want to change. We want certainty and security. But the only thing that's a constant in this life is change, okay? So there's a couple of things. We need to let our body guide us, okay? So this is where I was talking about the gut feeling, the twist, the goosebumps, the tight chest. All of these signals are from our soul. These are signals. There's like things coming at us that are guiding us. And we don't even have to really ask for it. We just have to tune into it. We just have to tune into the right channel. That's all that is. If you start trusting your body's signals, it will rebuild your intuition muscle. Okay, and then we need to be still. We need to, our inner wisdom lives and breathes in still moments. Okay, make stillness a ritual. And then I wrote this: sit, breathe, listen, let the thoughts come. Don't follow them. Eventually, something deeper will come up. It always does. Even 5 minutes a day to sit and be still in silence and to feel with no agenda and no distraction. You don't want to go in and say, okay, I need the answers to these. Now, sometimes you can have that desire. You can have answers that you need. But you go in and you sit in silence with no expectations and no agenda. And your answers, you'll get the answers you need. And basically what I wrote here is it will open the door. Being still will open the door for you. Okay, and then this one, of course, I've got to bring this up because this is one of my favorite things, journaling. Use journaling as a mirror. This worked so well for me. It's a little bit undescribable at this point. When it is done freely, it will bypass your ego. Okay, so think about journaling as your inner self is talking to you. Okay, so when you journal freely, when you write, it will bypass your ego. And you're not going to know that until you try it. It sounds kind of crazy, but it's really not. So write without censoring. Ask your inner self a question and then start writing. Respond as if you already know the answer. I will tell you, sometimes my pen gets going and sometimes I can't write fast enough. And it's really cool to experience. And then here's some questions to ask yourself when you're opening your journal. And you can ask these every day if you want. What do I already know but haven't admitted? That'd be a great place to start. And then ask yourself this: what is my body asking me to hear? This one is good because we all want our body to be well and to be healthy, especially as we get older. This is really important. And then this one is really great. What am I pretending not to know? Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not sure about that. Okay, so then, and I'm just expanding on some of the things that I wrote earlier as far as being still, listening to those, our body giving us messages as far as gut feelings. So the next one is I expanded on was being creative, okay? Dance, paint, sing, build, walk. Even walking, you can get creative stuff, especially if you're a person who, say, likes taking photographs. We all have these powerful cameras in our pockets, and I've been a person who's always loved photography, and I have taken tons of pictures. In fact, the other day on my walk, it was windy, and there's spring leaves and spring things coming on the trees and flowers, and everything's just blooming, and it's gorgeous. And there's a tree, I really am not sure the exact name of it, but it's got these long, beautiful, the leaves are coming in, and then it's got these long kind of stringy things with little balls on the end of it. And it was blowing. And it was just so beautiful to me. So I stood there for a few minutes and took a bunch of pictures, and they actually turned out pretty good. So even just walking can get your creative juices going. So when you are creative, you enter a flow state. Okay, your mind quiets and you get deeper intelligence that moves through you. You know, I know when I'm wrapped up in a painting, you go into this flow state that you can't describe until you experience it. Okay, so use creation to commune, not to produce. You know, I have a ton of paintings that I've done, and at one point, a year and a half ago, they were in a restaurant. I mean, one of my sisters is friends with some people who own a restaurant. It's a lovely little, amazing restaurant, and so for a year, my art hung in this restaurant. Then they switched to another local artist, and all my stuff came down, and I just kind of keep painting, and I have I've given away a lot of my art, but I have a little stack, little room full of my paintings. So even though there is producing happening, my goal is not to produce. My goal is to go into a creative flow and let my inner wisdom, my creative child come out. It's really an amazing thing to experience. So I wrote, use creation to commune, not produce. This is your soul speaking. Like if you are a person who's never done anything that you would consider creative, it does not matter what it is. Making music, growing stuff in your yard, playing with your grandchildren, playing with your own children. That can be very creative. Okay, so it doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to copy or be like anybody else. Okay, and then the idea of trying to fix our emotions. Okay, so don't try to fix your emotions. Look at your emotions as messengers. Okay, try feeling them fully. Okay, so then this is what I wrote. Sit with sadness and ask it, what do you need? I mean, we all have moments, we're human beings, where something is really sad. And it could be something really major, like losing your mom or your dad, or losing a sibling, or someone close to you dying. It could be something very sad like that. It could be something you were really hoping to get and you didn't get it. Or it could just be something that makes you sad. And so sit with it without any expectations and just ask, what do you need? You're asking the sad, you're asking it, you're feeling it. You know, a lot of us just stuff down our emotions, and for the most part, for most people, especially if you're a good person and you're a nice person and you don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, our body will start to express physical pain because of emotions like sadness and anger and things like that. So we have to be able to feel them fully to release them and respect what the message is that they're giving you. So then be with anger and ask it, what boundary is being violated? So there's something that's happening when you are so angry you can almost not see straight. And we have also all had those moments. Okay? So what boundary is being violated? It could be something really simple you might not even realize you have. That was a boundary for you. So when you are present, your inner wisdom will reveal itself. So when you are present with these emotions, when you don't have anything distracting you, so don't sit with sadness with your best friend. Now you can have a moment where you talk over your sadness with your friends or your family members, but you need to have that moment by yourself as well. You need to get your own inner wisdom guidance, okay? So then I had this idea of how to tell the difference between your ego and your inner wisdom, okay? Let's see what. Okay, so I wrote a little list. So there's your ego voice and your inner wisdom, because your ego is going to try to step in and stomp out your inner wisdom. I guarantee it, especially once you really start going, I need my own inner wisdom. But your ego is smart. And it's gonna try to get you. So here's how you can tell the difference. Your ego is loud and urgent and full of fear, where your inner wisdom is calm, it's quiet, and it's clear. The message from your inner wisdom is extremely clear. There's no, well, maybe, well, this, what's 80% and 20%? No, your inner wisdom is clear, okay? Your ego wants control and validation, and your inner wisdom offers freedom and neutrality. just neutral, just there, right? Freedom. And then your ego is reactive and judgmental, but your inner wisdom is compassionate and discerning. Okay? Your ego lives in lack or comparison. So I don't have enough of this. Why do they have more than I have? Okay? And your inner wisdom lives in wholeness. No matter what it is that you have, you are whole. And then the last one I wrote on this list was your ego will push and force, but your inner wisdom invites and flows. It's an invitation, and it just flows. There's no pushing, there's no shoving, there's no anger, there's no trying to convince you. It just is. When you get a message, wonder this. Is it fear or is it truth? Does it feel like fear? Does it feel like truth? So this is where the practice comes in. You practice listening for your inner wisdom, and then you might get that gut clench where you're like, oh, okay, that feels like truth. Okay, so is it fear? But think about fear. Fear can lay on your heart too. So there is a nuance. There's nuance to this. So let me read this again. When you get a message, wonder this. Is it fear or truth? Then drop into your body. And here's what you'll notice. Fear constricts and wisdom expands. So drop into your body when you feel a message or you're asking for a message from your higher self. Okay? And then the last part of this is where I'm going to end this. All of this, the shift, the awakening, the liberation, it all depends on each of us returning to our own truth. Okay? Not someone else's truth, not borrowed truth, not scripted or programmed truth, okay? Your truth. Your own truth, okay? And then I wrote on the side, your inner listening is the quiet revolution, okay? Your inner listening is the quiet revolution. Then we no longer need to be controlled. I couldn't read my own writing there. So then, let me read this again. Then we no longer need to be controlled. We no longer are easy to manipulate. We no longer stay in systems that no longer serve us. That's where the old timeline crumbles. And that's where I left it. It was just an interesting thought process that just kept tapping on my head. Like, there is an art to our own inner wisdom. And if you really think about that, and all these little tips, sitting in stillness, letting our body give us clues, sitting with our emotions, this is actually the fast track to the awakened timeline, and to stay on it. Because I will tell you, once you get on that timeline, you're on it. And then there's just going to still be stuff while you're walking through this earthly existence, which is really pretty fascinating. So felt a tiny bit rambly today, but it was an interesting week. The energies of the planet were crazy this week. And as usual, just lots of stuff going on. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you have little tips and tricks that you do to help yourself get into this flow state? Maybe the question is, what I would love to know, what is it that you do that's creative, that opens up that portal of your own inner wisdom? I bet we have people who do all kinds of things. Maybe just, if you've never commented on a video, maybe even just put one word. Like, if you love gardening and that's your creative outlet, gardening. Give me a one-word comment. I'd love to know what it is. And if you're so inclined, what I'd really love is, I'd love to know where you're from. I'm here in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I know we have people kind of from all over, and I'd love to find out where you guys are from. So thanks for tuning in today, guys. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful Sunday and a third week. In fact, before I turn off this video, happy Easter. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful Easter day, and we will see you next week.